Okay, May, June 2014. All right. So question one in the diagram, LM is the country's PPC. Which statement must be correct? F is productively inefficient. Well, I guess you could say so because, well, there's wastage of resources happening. All points on the PPC are productively efficient. If it's here, um, might not be productively inefficient. Let's look at the other options anyways. G and H are productively efficient but economically inefficient. Now, G and H are productively inefficient because they're on the PPC. They could be economically inefficient if you look at allocative efficiency. However, you can't tell from the diagram, so it's not something that must be correct. Only E is economically efficient. Well, again, with economic efficiency, you take into account allocative efficiency, which you really can't tell from the diagram. You'll have to look at. So for an economy, allocative efficiency is where no redistribution of resources can make someone better off without making someone else worse off. So it's the question of where you position yourself on the PPC, but we can't simply tell that by looking at the diagram. Only G is productively efficient. Well, no. H is also productively efficient, so you can cross that out, leaving you with A, which we had already explained why A is correct. Question two, in the diagram, a consumer's initial budget line is JK. Assuming no change in the price of X, what could explain a shift in the consumer's budget line to GH? So if you think about this, um, there is less of X being you can produce you can consume less of X. However, there is no change in the price of X. So the only explanation possible there is that your budget line, your money income, basically, uh, your money income decreased, which shifted your budget line inwards. And then what happened later on, which I'm going to draw with blue, is your price of good Y that fell, which is why you can consume more of Y. So price of good Y decreased, consumers' money income decreased. That was fine for the explanation, right?
Yes.
Okay, so enthusiastic yeses all the way. Um, the table shows the output of chairs at a factory when when different number of workers are employed. Diminishing marginal returns to labor will set in when. Um, okay, so the intervals that you have for number of workers, they're all one, like, so we'll go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, so on. So your interval is still 1. If you want to look at the your marginal um, product that they produce, so the first worker produces if I can just make this, if you look at your marginal product, your first worker produces 6, the second worker produces the difference between 17 and 6, which is 11. 10, this is what, 3 and 5, so like, so 3 and 2, 5, and this is, well, this is like -2. So here, in fact, the addition of the workers actually reduced total product, and so the marginal product has gone into negative. Anyhow, so the diminishing marginal returns set in when you increase labor, your the increase the increase in product basically is not to proportion. That's the idea. So where can we say that's being set in here? So if you went from 1 to 2, you're going from 6 to 11, the marginal product, so it's in total product is increasing at an increasing rate. When you go from 2 to 3, on the other hand, marginal product falls, so total product is increasing at a decreasing rate, and hence your marginal returns diminish since you go from 11 to 10, so marginal product falls. And I believe you can tick when the third worker is employed, because when you go from 2 to 3, then that is where this happens, right?
Yes.
Okay, so in the diagram, S is the individual workers supply of labor curve. What could cause the curve to shift from S1 to S2, which means the worker is willing, if you just draw a line here, previously he was willing to work quantity Q at this particular wage rate. Now he's willing to work the same amount of hours at a lower wage rate. So what has happened there? If you decrease the hourly wage rate, that would cause like a movement. Well, sorry, that would be kind of like a move. You're decreasing the y value, so that would cause a movement on the curve. It wouldn't cause a shift, so you can cross that out. A decrease in work satisfaction. If work satisfaction decreases, then you'd only work more. You'd work the same amount of hours for a higher wage because your disutility of work has gone up. So for that, something like this would have made sense, not what we have here. A decrease in the opportunity cost of leisure. So opportunity, if you decrease the opportunity cost of leisure, that basically means your wage rate in a way has gone down. Because if your wage rate decreases, then the opportunity cost of choosing leisure over working is less because you're giving up less wages per hour. So you can cross that out because that again would have just caused a movement. D would be your answer because a decreased preference for leisure. So you don't prefer leisure that much. You like your preference for work. If your preference for leisure decreases, that's the same thing as saying your preference for work has increased, and hence you'd be willing to work the same amount of hours, even at a smaller or a lesser wage rate because your preference for work has increased or your disutility of work has decreased. That's one way to look at it. 5, the table shows the marginal revenue product of a labor schedule of a profit maximizing firm producing under conditions of perfect competition. If the wage is $135, what is the maximum number of workers the firm will employ? So if you think about this, the profit maximizing firm wants to employ till MC is equals to MRP. Now you have your marginal revenue product. The MC is 135, and you have now be a little careful. You have two 135s here, but you're going to pick this one. Well, for two reasons. Firstly, they've talked about the maximum number of workers, and secondly, if you just visualize this, your MRP curve would go something like this. So even if your wage rate is such that it's cutting at two particular points, if you stop here, it won't be beneficial because you've missed out on all of this area where the MRP was above your marginal cost. What you want to produce, you want to employ labor till this particular point, till point, let's say Q, because after this point your MC will be below MRP. So this is the point where you want to stop. But before this point, MRP was above MC. So because of that as well, you would pick 5 rather than picking 3. So your answer would be C. 6, in 2004, union of officials and businessmen in Argentina. So you have union officials and businessmen. So, and what have they done? They've agreed to increase the minimum wage from 350 to 450 pesos. In which circumstance would such a rise increase employment? So which circumstance would this increase employment? Now, investment increases at a more rapid rate than consumption. Maybe I could say, because like if investment increases, then demand for labor might go up as well. But let's put this on hold till we look at the other options. Labor and product markets are competitive. If they're competitive, then a rise in wage leads to a contraction in demand. So like it decreases employment, not increases. A high wage rate produces a proportionately greater rise in labor productivity, and that would be your answer, because if the wage rate increases, that normally results in unemployment. But if there's a proportionally greater rise in labor productivity, that means MRP increases, which is basically your demand for labor, and because of that, you can still have employment, an increase in employment. If you set the minimum wage above the equilibrium, that just, if you haven't specified anything else in a normal situation, that would still cause unemployment. The reason we can cross out A is because there's no direct link here. Like if, uh, like I could say that maybe if investment increases, then maybe there's greater demand for labor. There's a lot of maybes there. C is your more definitive answer. It's more direct and has a more direct link with the question. Question 7. The table gives information about a firm's costs over a range of output in the short run and the long run. Which conclusions can be drawn about the characteristics of production over this output range in the short run and in the long run? Well, I believe you can cross out B without looking at anything, because I don't think economies of scale exist in the short run, and similarly, diminishing returns also do not exist in the long run. In the long run, you can have things to scale, so increasing, decreasing stuff to scale economies, which then lead to economies and diseconomies of scale. And the short run, you have returns, but which kind of makes it obvious that in the short run you have increasing returns. But let's look at why, anyways. So if you look at this, what's happening, for the change in output, the intervals is the same. You have 1,000 output is increasing by 1,000, and your short-run average cost is decreasing. So if your average cost decreases, the reason that happens is because you have increasing returns. Let's look at your long-run average cost. So your long-run average cost is in fact going from, it's for an equal change in output, your long-run average cost is in fact increasing. It's going from like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So because of that, economies of scale means decreasing average cost, so you can cross that out. That leaves you with C, and that makes sense because decreasing returns to scale means you're increasing your inputs by a particular amount, but you're not getting a proportionate increase in output. It's less than proportionate increase in output, which means you have to put more inputs for the same amount of output, which means for the same amount of output, your cost of production, your average cost of production keeps on increasing and increasing. So decreasing returns to scale in fact leads to diseconomies of scale, which is exactly what's happening. The diagram shows an individual worker's supply curve of labor. The hourly wage is W, and the worker is required to work a standard 40-hour work week, which area measures the minimum amount per week. He would be willing to accept. Now, the minimum amount is normally your transfer earnings or your supply price. You just look at it like this. That would be V plus X. And I believe that's it for this question, right? Any validation?
Yes, it is. Actually.
Okay, thank you. The table shows a firm's marginal cost. The average fixed cost, so your average fixed cost of producing 5 units is 6. What is the total cost of producing 5 units? So let's first figure out your fixed cost. So your average fixed cost is going to be your total fixed cost upon quantity. So you just multiply average fixed cost with quantity to get your total fixed cost, which would be, 5 units is $6, so that would be 30. Now, this is your total fixed cost, and they want the total cost of producing 5 units. So this is your fixed cost right there. Now we just have to calculate your total variable cost. So your marginal cost is basically the additional cost of producing an output. So it's independent of fixed cost. So fixed cost is there. Marginal cost is the cost is going to add on to that cost for every single output. So for 1 it is 40, for 2 it's 30, 3 it's 20. And so you just add all of these.
190.
You get 190. Yeah. So this is your this is your total variable cost. You added with.
No. 190 is when you add the fixed cost as well.
Okay. So this you're getting is 160. This is your total variable cost. You add this to your total fixed cost, you get 190. What could explain why the proportion of total employment, so of total employment in an economy accounted for by small firms decreases, which basically means like in the entire economy, the amount of people that are employed, let's say there are 100 people employed in the entire economy. Previously, small firms, let's say they used to, out of this 125 people used to be employed by small firms. Now only 19 people are employed by small firms. So it's kind of like asking, why are small firms either decreasing their output, or why are small firms being driven out of the market? Because if you have fewer small firms, it's likely that they employ a smaller proportion of total employment. So let's see a trend towards the use of subcontractors to produce specialized components that encourages small firms, not drives them out. Growing technical economies of scale in manufacturing, I would believe so, because um, technical economies of scale basically uh, help you increase your minimum efficient scale, the particular output where you have average cost falls to its minimum point. So like if your long run average cost curve was something like this, uh, now because of technical economies of scale, it could be something like whoa, like this, badly drawn. But the idea is technical economies of scale. Instead of your minimum efficient scale being this, it could be something along these lines, because it overrides the effect of any managerial diseconomies. So output falls, average cost falls over a greater range of output. And clearly, now this is the optimum output you should produce, which favors you being large rather than favors you being small. That would be your answer. If you look at the other things, growth of the service sector and a decline in manufacturing, service sector, in fact, is more preferable for small firms. It's easier for small firms to set up in the service sector because of lower uh, fixed cost and sunk cost and all. So that's wrong. The opening up of specialist markets. So if specialist markets open up, that also helps small firms. So that would increase the proportion of total employment. It wouldn't decrease the proportion. So I guess we can check our answers, because we'll be doing 10 MCQs per video. So let's quickly do so. Yeah, so all of these 10 MCQs were fine. We marked our answers correctly, and we'll continue this paper in the next video.